I'm Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today is Tuesday. It's September 5th, 2023. I hope everyone had a good Labor Day. We're now in the officially the end of summer, beginning of fall, and I think it's going to be a very eventful fall. I'm expecting that we're going to see dramatic downturns of the economy. I think we're going to have an increasingly intensifying battle over Ukraine and our continued involvement in this ridiculous war, in which we are only benefiting the arms dealers that are making billions, like the Obama administration, which I still think is running the country, and had all this money going to pharmaceuticals, billions of dollars, and now billions of dollars to arms dealers. We're going to see the intentional destruction of the middle class beginning to be realized by the middle class. And the understanding that this woke agenda is an agenda that is designed to radicalize the nation over race, a nation which really has not got endemic systemic racism, a nation which has fought this issue and in the spirit of Martin Luther King has embraced the idea of a colorblind society. We're not perfect. But again, the fundamental ideals of the country are not to intensify race hatred, which is what the woke agenda does in order to destroy America. All these things, I think, are going to get exposed as Donald Trump is going to be facing trials for doing nothing more than objecting to the 2020 election as being stolen. And I believe now the American people are going to get a chance to litigate that issue, just as the impeachment hearings gave Donald Trump an opportunity to litigate the reality of the fake Russian collusion investigation that took up at least 2 years of his administration in complete nonsense that was fabricated by Obama and Hillary, that the Russians stole the Democrats' emails, a complete nonsense. And I argued it in front of the Department of Justice. They called me to the grand jury. They would say I lied because I did not have a contact with Julian Assange. They gave me a plea deal. I rejected the plea deal. They never indicted me. They were the criminal liars, the Justice Department. I think Americans are getting tired of this. And we go back to school. Do you really want to send your children to get them indoctrinated that they're not boys and girls? The first story here I want to cover is on this Ivermectin. Now, people don't realize it, but there was a Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals which reversed a lower court's sovereignty immunity that protected the Food and Drug Administration from any wrongdoing in telling the public to stop taking ivermectin during the COVID-19. Now, I had at that time a telemedicine company that was providing ivermectin, and the Claiborne Committee in the House wanted to investigate us. Well, it was off-label, and according to the FDA, off-label could be prescribed for COVID or any other reason a doctor considered appropriate, and it did help people. It did fight COVID. Now, in the opinion of this Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, Judges Clement, Elrod, and Willett state the FDA argues that Twitter posts are, quote, informational statements that cannot qualify as rules because they, quote, do not direct customers or anyone else to do or refrain from doing anything. We are not convinced. So we're pleased with the development here was that the court said that the FDA overstepped. The FDA was dictating what kind of treatments could be made and what kind of treatments could not be made, and the FDA does not have that authority. That's the purview of doctors. So this lawsuit, which was brought by MDs, stated that the FDA acted outside its authority and illegally interfered with a doctor's ability to practice medicine with an aggressive effort to stop the prescription of ivermectin for the preventment and treatment of the COVID-19. Now, this is a very important case because I think it gives us the basis for challenging these agencies. As I wrote before we took the Labor Day break and we covered it, that there's also the building of climate scientists saying that the Environmental Protection Agency has overstepped its authority to demand this shift, this transition to wind and solar, because they have not looked at all the science. They are only looking at the politically correct science that says climate change is a proven fact. It's not a proven fact. And I want to cover that as much as we can, but this is the beginning, I think, of a pushback against this agenda. I want to cover one more story that I'm going to ask Chris to comment. This is another story that really caught my attention today with the State Department overstepping its authority. So we have now, we're beginning to see that the LGBT travel advisory for the U.S. is really this kind of sick joke when these pride fests are displaying lewdness in front of children. So the federal government issued an unusual new travel advisory, State Department getting involved and basically saying that the members of now it's the 2S LGBTQ1QI+, whatever that means, shouldn't come to the United States. Canada issued this because some states are not promoting gay and trans agendas with sufficient enthusiasm. Well, I hope that would be all 50 states. This is an insane agenda. LGBT people are in actual physical danger going to these states in America. That's what the Canadian government is saying. So, some states like Florida are insisting that parents are aware that if their children decide they want to make a change in gender or pronouns, that maybe that is in fact just gender ideology, Marxism and gender. These children will be destroying their lives permanently. And Governor Ron DeSantis introduced and signed the parental rights bill about a year ago. And, it was ludicrously said, don't say gay. And the LGBT woke activists, the gender insecure, challenged this. But in fact, if there's going to be issued State Department travel alerts because states are not sufficiently LGBT friendly, or our State Department's not out there promoting LGBT in Muslim countries, which is insanity. Again, the State Department's overstepped its limits. State Department's authority does not extend to making these kinds of rules, which are authoritarian in nature and basically are imposing ideological restraints on travel based on an agenda of sex that I think violates traditional morality and is an attempt to destroy the traditional family. Again, these things violate God's law, they're immoral, and that they become state policy. I think the federal courts need to be involved. My fundamental solution is take the entire bureaucracy of the United States and ship it to Death Valley and let them have all the solar and wind they want in order to provide air conditioning for themselves. The climate change is a nonsense, and this is something I'm going to emphasize again this week, and that we should not make it the ideological purpose of the United States to impose a transition to wind and solar. It will kill millions of people, billions of people ultimately, because we won't be able to produce the food we need. And the left, the woke left, knows it. It's why they're promoting an agenda they will not allow you to debate. Chris, your comments?
The idea that the State Department is telling you which states are gay-friendly or not, depending on which laws are passed and which schools allow certain books to be allowed in elementary school libraries, is utterly ridiculous. That's basically not telling you, don't visit this state because people are going to be horrible to you and throw you in jail just for doing what you're doing. No, it's telling these people they don't fit our agenda and the radical agenda that's going to be pushing you very soon. So don't go there. Don't give them your money because we don't like them.
Yeah, the point is ideological imposing of restrictions. If you don't have our most recent, the 97th vaccine booster, you don't have a green pass and you can't travel. Basically the State Department would be outlawing anyone who does not comply to the LGBT plus about 1,000 other letters agenda of gender insecurity. gender uncertainty. And if we go down this schizophrenic madness, we'll destroy America. And they know it. That's the whole point. They're using the bureaucratic system, which are not elected officials, in order to impose rules that if you violate their woke agenda, you are canceled or banned or not, can't survive, can't make it economically, can't travel. Pretty soon they'll have you being locked in your home. And these are, if we don't resist it now, we will lose the fundamental values for which this country was created, and we'll violate God's law. It will be a disaster. These people they know it. They're satanic. I'm looking at this Burning Man festival, and I'm realizing if this isn't the judgment of God here, these people have gone through rain, disease, not being able to get out of there. This nut group case of people who are worshiping this Burning Man idol every year, coming and having this big lewd festival. Finally, I think God's saying enough. And certainly I'm saying enough. And we're saying that we want this insanity, this increasing divorce, lockdown, destroy marriages, destroy economic survival, destroy the middle class. Let's call this agenda for what it is. It's neo-Marxism, cultural Maoism. It's an attack on the culture, and it's very destructive. Chris, any final comment? I want to move on because we want to cover as much as I can today.
As has been said many times before, freedom is the bane of control by government, the bane of the World Economic Forum's agenda, and the bane of the climate change, let's just say, dictatorship around the world.
And again, we've got to fight it. Economic stories. It came out over the weekend is that, in fact, some of the analyses were done. It's interesting how the government is falsifying statistics in order to make Bidenomics look like it's working. So, you have these reports coming out of the Department of Labor in August, for instance, this Goldilocks, that we've got just the right number of jobs being created. And that gets reported, and looks like the unemployment rate is going down, and this is rosy, rosy, rosy. Well, then a few weeks later, the government adjusts the figures. And what is being clear is that the Bureau of Labor Statistics is hiding the fact that 1.2 million native-born workers have just lost their jobs, and they've been replaced by 668,000 foreign-born workers. So you're seeing actually downward monthly payrolls for every single month in 2023. And this is a statistically improbable outcome unless there was political interference in the reporting of unemployment data. Okay, and so you're finally now, as the banks are beginning to take their losses and beginning to find their balance sheets increasingly troubled by assets that are going bankrupt, including home mortgages, commercial real estate business from downtowns that are largely vacant. Our schools, we've never had this high an absentee ratio, especially among minorities. The New York Times is reporting on this today. In schools, public schools, kids are just not attending. I mean, why bother? You're not going to learn anything. Might as well stay away. You get busting everything into schools. You have to wake up early in the morning. It's a pain growing up as a kid. You have to take tests, which you're not prepared for. Go through this boring, and then they get in there, and all they're teaching you is, gender confusion. You don't even really understand what sex is. They're teaching 5 and 6 years old about sex. This is insanity. They have no concept of what sex is. They're not biologically developed enough to experience it. This is child abuse, pedophilia at its most extreme. And we have a group, the teachers' union, that is dedicated to pedophilia by indoctrinating children about sex that they don't understand. It's a tragedy. And kids are right to stay away. I mean, I would not let my child go to a public school. And these are the tragedies that we're seeing inflicted. And then the lies. Now, this is all going to come to an end, because when the middle class of America can't afford to put food on the table, and inflation with the amount of money that we're printing, it's just become obvious now, the federal government can only pay the interest on our $33 trillion debt by just printing enough money to pay the interest. and that's going to devalue the currency. It's going to mean that the money is worthless. You're paying back people who have bought U.S. Treasury debt or agency debt, mortgage-backed securities or commercial real estate-backed securities at a precious dollar amount and get paid back in worthless dollars that have much less purchase power. That's why if you take a look at the website, we're redesigning the website, and I'm going to emphasize the necessity to look at this book. You've got to start reading some of the things I've been writing. I'm going to make sure that everybody understands their importance because, for instance, as Chris will show you, this book it's a small book. You can get it free if you call the number there. The 800 number is Swiss America. And right below it is a banner where you can get the $50 offer of Swiss America. These Walking Liberty $50. You can buy up to 250 of them for first-time buyers. You better prepare yourself for what's coming because now we're entered into the fall, and the fall is when these economic crises tend to come to roost. Call Swiss America, start talking to them, get some gold so you have some permanent value. Okay, let's go to the next story. The whole series here over the weekend of stories on the climate really drew my attention. I'm following in Great Britain this new prime minister who is Rishi Sunak, and he is both. There's a big issue here in the politics. The Conservative Party is under attack because they're trying to say that these wind farms that the left wants to put into place are going to destroy farming, going to take up rural land, going to kill birds, and are going to cost a lot more money. And while Sunak would like to cut back on these, the wind turbines, which produce an enormous amount of junk when these turbines break. The blades are huge, the turbines are big, they're unwieldy, they break down, and you've just got junk that has to be recycled. The left wants to put them in place, and ideologically, I'm watching closely this Net Zero Watch, which is done by Andrew Montfort, and I cover Andrew Montfort extensively. He's a brilliant scientist who understands statistics. And in my book, The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change, you've got to read, people. I know this is a big book. You've got to understand the climate science because this is a complete lie. And we'll cover tomorrow some of the climate scientists who are now coming forward and saying it. And by the way, coming out soon is the book I've written to follow it up. You can see the two of them are even formatted the same, both about the same length. This one has 1,400 footnotes in it. And it is The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy, exposing woke lies in an age of disinformation. We are in an age of disinformation, being lied to. If government's talking, you might as well assume it's lying and ask why. That's the only question. Assume the Obama administration can only lie and then ask why. That's the only way to approach politics today. Okay, now as we continue to track these stories, Wolford is saying essentially that every time a new wind farm comes on stream, we have to fork out subsidies. Wholesale prices are pushed up. Our bill for switching off wind farms increase because we have to put enormous amounts of money into more grid balancing services. It's a lose-lose-lose situation for the customer. So it's hardly going to be a win for the government. Pretty soon, many Great Britons are going to have to choose between freezing at night or not eating the next day. And when the middle class is squeezed like this, going back to Aristotle, it's a formula for a country to become destabilized. Let's cover a couple more climate stories that developed over the weekend. This ESG, which is the investment on environmental, social, and governance, which is a complete ideological attempt to force investment into companies which follow and take a knee to the climate change green agenda. Chris Talgo wrote on AmericanThinker.com, and I'm writing extensively on AmericanThinker.com, and he said essentially that BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, who was a champion of ESG investing, has begun to say, I don't use the word ESG anymore because it's been weaponized. What Fink is realizing is that investing in ESG companies hurts 401k investors and hurts others. Now, we have a tool on this website, which is from Eric Smith. I'm going to be covering it much more extensively in this next few months. But Eric's tool allows you to take your 401k investments in mutual funds and see how well those mutual funds are doing. Now, if you've got an advisor who has designed your 401k and picked funds that are not doing particularly well ranked with others in the class, there are a growing number of lawsuits against these advisors because the current Department of Labor ERISA, which these funds are ERISA, they're all under a law which allows them to be tax favored, these 401k plans and other pension funds. If the funds are not designed as the best for the customer, the investment advisor can be sued. And people are realizing, and the ESG funds are losing dogs. BlackRock reported in its 2023 Global Voting Spotlight that it, quote, found many of the shareholder proposals to be overly prescriptive or unduly constraining on management, including some that thought to micromanage a company's strategy or change a company's business model in order to comply with ESG requirements. The report noted that BlackRock outright opposed 742 of the record 813 proposals it voted on, including rejecting 93% of the social and climate change proposals it issued proxy votes on. So if companies like BlackRock are beginning to move against ESG, people are realizing that this leftist woke agenda is really an agenda designed to depopulate and kill people. If we're destroying farms, it's insanity. Now, a couple more stories quickly. New Jersey, where I live, there's an offshore wind farm that has lost $8 billion. So the company building these wind power generators off the coast of New Jersey suffered a stock market crash, losing 25% of its value, or about $8 billion. This happened last week, around August 31st, which was my birthday. By the way, I'm 77 years old, and I think I'm doing fine, actively very involved. Take a look at My Vital C, which is one of our sponsors. We made it easier on the website for you to find our sponsors. My Vital C is a remarkable molecule, carbon-60, and it does have longevity properties, which I can attest to. I've been taking it for 4 years, and I feel and am sustaining, I think, at a much higher level of production because of My Vital C. I encourage you to try it. Okay, so this Danish energy company, Ørsted, said it's just going to walk away from the Jersey offshore plan. In July, the company threatened to abandon the windmill plans, which promoted Governor Phil Murphy, another completely woke New Jersey governor that was aiming to destroy New Jersey. People moving out of New Jersey in droves, like out of New York. Cities like Newark headed towards being another Democratic hellhole. So the Democrats in Trenton, which is the capital of New Jersey, under Phil Murphy's direction, gave $1 billion bailout to this Danish company, Ørsted, to keep building the offshore wind farm. That money was originally earmarked to offset rising energy costs for utility customers. Forget it. The customers are going to bear the costs. New Jersey costs of energy are going to go up because of this stupid wind farm. And yet the developer could lose an additional $2.3 billion, which could encourage them to cancel. If these wind farms don't get amazing amounts of subsidies, they don't work. Well, if you had a turbine that could produce enough energy that could power Newark, you wouldn't need subsidies. These turbines the wind doesn't blow all the time. These are stupid ideas. Yes, you can generate some wind energy. To transition to generate all the energy we need to maintain the modern industrial state by wind or solar power is idiocy. And these people know it. They intend to ideologically convince you that you're destroying the earth by hydrocarbon being emitted by carbon dioxide being emitted by hydrocarbon fuels being utilized, which essentially is nothing more than an attack on capitalism. And finally, the story I want to mention is that you have now coming out these Louisiana fires, as well as fires in Maui. And I think in Maui, this town that burned down, the globalists just wanted to get rid of the locals and just burned them out. And the whole way that came down, with people not being able to escape, with the water being turned off, people couldn't put the fires out. I think this was intentional murder and should be prosecuted as murder by those officials who did it. This largest wind fire in Louisiana, we now know, was arson. And a lot of these fires have been set by arsonists who are trying to say climate change when they know the only reason that these wild forests or the wild, life, these wild brushes are getting fire is because they have not been properly managed under the rules of forestry. Fires burn down. It's natural part of enriching the soil. Forest fires have been going on for eons. And if you don't look at geological history, going back hundreds of millions of years, 600 million years ago, the Earth was colder and had more carbon dioxide by a lot. Today, we're warmer, and we've actually got a lot less carbon dioxide. This whole idea that carbon dioxide is only increasing because of the industrial age is not true, and legitimate climate science can prove it. I covered that in my book, and on the truth about. My books are the truth about. You've got to understand that we're pursuing here the truth, and we're willing to stand with the truth despite being censored, being marginalized, being ridiculed. I've been going on with that for 20 years since I wrote and co-authored Unfit for Command against John Kerry with John O'Neill. We exposed John Kerry's fraudulent military history in Vietnam that he was utilizing to become president, lying, throwing away his medals, claiming he still had them, complete fraud. Well, I've been demonized since then. So what difference does it make? We're going to take the truth and going to stand by the truth. And under the biblical principle, the truth is what will set us free. Chris, any comments before we wrap up today?
The other thing about the Maui fires, I know there were quite a few. You talked about the grease fires, the arson there before. There are accidental wildfires that have taken place where people are camping out or maybe just going somewhere and they start and they run all over the place. It's so easy to say, hey, it was climate change. That's the reason. It's funny because now we're talking about invasive species of grass in Hawaii. That's what I was reading a little earlier today. And some invasive species of grass in Hawaii may have, this according to the Associated Press, may have infiltrated this state. And that kind of grass, and I don't remember off the top of my head which it was, but when it grows, it burns because of the way it is. And if you're in a climate like Hawaii, it's well, that's another issue. The other problem I had with the Maui wildfire was the actions taken during such. Whereas the man who was supposed to set off the alarm, right?
Right.
He didn't set off the alarm. There were no real warnings for people to get out and take care of themselves. He was then, let's just say, allowed to resign, citing a health issue. There are a lot of questions to be asked about that fire.
He should have been investigated for murder. I mean, they turned off the water so people couldn't put these fires out. They had people get into the ocean in order to avoid being burned to death. There's something like 2,000 children who are missing. I mean, this is a massive crime, and it's a crime being committed in the advancement of this lying climate change agenda. And the Justice Department won't investigate it because the Justice Department is completely political and is out to destroy Donald Trump because Donald Trump loves America. This is so messed up. It's FUBAR beyond belief. And it's time for it to stop.
Agreed. There's no way around it. We need to fight back. We need to push back, keep bringing the information out there. But the fact is, letting people like this resign in silence means there's something bigger to the story, and they don't want you to find out. It goes deeper than just the one person. It must. It just must.
Well, let's wrap it up for today. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today is Tuesday. It's September 5th, 2023. This is the beginning of the fall season. We'll get to September, then we get into the fourth quarter. I'm predicting a massive economic downturn in the fourth quarter. Stock market could lose 10,000 points. I'm recommending that you protect yourself with getting some gold and silver, the dollars you have today. Contact SwissAmerica.com. We're going to start the telemedicine programs. We'll be ramping those up in September. We'll have telemedicine again active in October. I've got 2 or 3 programs we're starting. We'll be announcing them here on the Truth Central. This is the Truth Central. We're going to pursue these topics courageously and forthright. We're going to show you what the truth is. We're going to fight this woke agenda. In the end, God always wins. God will win here too. Things that this woke agenda wants us to do are against God's law. We need to go back to families. We need to go back to the fundamental moral code of the 10 Commandments. We need to quit breaking up marriages because people find it inconvenient to continue working to develop their relationships with their existing spouses, the one that they loved and want so much that they married in exclusion of all others of the sex that they chose to marry. And generally, it was men and women getting together. Mature relationships take work. Divorce is stupidly easy, and people generally divorce and make the same mistake over again. If we go back to God's law, and I'm recommending that we are at the moment in history of 2 Chronicles 7:14, please join me in getting down on my knees and asking God's forgiveness that we allowed it to get here. We allowed the Supreme Court to remove God from the schools going back to the 40s. We killed millions of children in the womb. These are horrendous violations of God's law. And I'm begging God to allow us to acknowledge our sin and not following his law, and to forgive us, provide us his redeeming gift grace. We announce Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. And I ask you to join me in doing that. In the end, God always wins. God will win here too. Even though we're on the verge of nuclear war, self-destruction of our economy, and a set of principles in the American Constitution that are unique in history and need to be preserved. In the end, God will win if enough people join. In the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14, we shall prevail. God will prevail no matter what we do. Dr. Jerome Corsi, thetruthcentral.com. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. God bless.